Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that it took 14 years and nearly 400 workers who used dynamite, drills, and incredible skill to carve the four 60-foot-tall faces of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln into the granite of South Dakota's Black Hills? Learn how on August 14, 1925, sculptor Gutzon Borglum proposed creating a shrine of democracy on Mount Rushmore National Memorial, forever changing the landscape of American history. Discover that Mount Rushmore welcomes more than 2 million visitors each year and stands as one of America's most recognizable monuments. So imagine you're just, suspending hundreds of men off this towering granite peak.
Yeah, just dangling there.
Right, dangling. And they're armed with pneumatic hammers, heavy steel cables, and just enough dynamite to systematically blast away nearly 500,000 tons of solid rock.
It's wild to even picture.
It is. And all of this is just to carve a human face that's, the size of a 6-story building? I mean, we are looking at a project that permanently altered the Earth's crust.
Honestly, it's one of the most audacious and you could argue almost reckless engineering feats of the 20th century.
Oh, absolutely.
When you look at the raw logistical data we have,
yeah,
it genuinely defies logic that it was ever attempted, let alone completed without, a massive loss of life.
Yeah, that's the part that really gets me. But anyway, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are jumping into a massive stack of historical sources today. We've got construction logs, political correspondence, architectural records, all to sort of uncover the startling history behind an image you have undoubtedly seen 1,000 times.
Mount Rushmore.
That's exactly Mount Rushmore.
But our mission today for this deep dive isn't just to marvel at a really big sculpture.
Right, there's a lot more to it.
We are tracking how a tiny, honestly desperate pitch to get passing cars to stop in South Dakota accidentally spiraled into this explosive, colossal engineering marvel that took, 14 years to finish?
14 years, yeah. And the contrast between how this project began and what it ultimately became is just jarring.
Totally.
We are going to examine the actual mechanical reality of carving a mountain, but more importantly, the strategic decisions behind the scenes.
The politics of it all.
Exactly. We'll explore why these specific faces were chosen, the pretty intense cultural friction of the location itself, and just the sheer political force required to finance what its creator eventually called a shrine of democracy.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core premise we are looking at is 4 gigantic faces, 60 feet tall, carved directly into the granite of South Dakota's Black Hills National Forest.
But to understand how George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln ended up on the side of a mountain, we kind of have to rewind to August 1924.
Yeah, back to a very different original idea.
Right. And we have to look at a guy who just had a really frustrating local problem.
Yeah, so we find the origin of the monument in the records of a man named Doane Robinson.
The state historian, right?
Exactly. He was the state historian of South Dakota at the time. And Robinson was watching this massive shift in American culture. Automobile travel was just becoming accessible to the middle class.
People were finally getting cars.
Right, families were taking road trips. But from Robinson's perspective, all of these early motorists were driving straight through South Dakota.
Just bypassing the whole state.
Literally on their way to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming.
They were treating his entire state as a drive-through.
Basically, yeah.
So he needs a way to force them to hit the brakes. And his initial pitch, according to these 1924 letters in our stack, was to use these tall, naturally occurring granite pillars along a local road called the Needles Highway.
Which is a very descriptive name.
It tells you everything you need to know. They were these really thin, spiky rock formations, and Robinson wanted to carve those pillars into heroes of the American West.
Right, figures like the famous Sioux Chief Red Cloud or, Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, so the ambition was honestly remarkably small in scope.
Very regional. Robinson envisioned a localized monument designed specifically for regional tourism. He just wanted a curiosity that would redirect some of that Yellowstone traffic into the Black Hills.
It's essentially the 1920s equivalent of building an elaborate roadside billboard.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
Just a flashy tourist trap to break up the drive. But Robinson isn't a sculptor, so he reaches out to this Danish-American artist named Gutzon Borglum to see if it's even feasible.
And Borglum's response is amazing.
It is.
Borglum sends back this wildly enthusiastic telegram, all in caps, reading, "Very much interested in your proposal. Great scheme you have. Hold to it. The North will welcome it."
Which is funny because Borglum's enthusiasm was totally genuine, but his actual vision was completely misaligned with Robinson's.
Oh, completely.
When Borglum finally traveled out to South Dakota to inspect the site, the reality of the geology just immediately killed the needle's idea.
Because of how thin they were.
Yeah, those granite spires were way too fragile to support massive carvings. They would have simply crumbled under the stress of heavy tools and dynamite.
So the billboard idea is basically dead on arrival.
Right. But rather than scrap the project, Borglum just elevates it. He entirely rejects the local heroes theme, he rejects the highway location, and he sets his sights on a massive, solid mountain peak that we know today as Mount Rushmore.
He literally hijacks the billboard pitch and turns it into this huge national manifesto.
He really does.
But the mountain he chose, it brings a tremendous amount of historical weight with it, doesn't it?
Oh, the location's history is profound.
Yeah.
I mean, long before the federal government ever designated it Mount Rushmore, that specific mountain was named the Six Grandfathers by the Lakota Sioux.
The Six Grandfathers.
Yeah. The name refers to the earth, the sky, and the four directions.
Wow.
For generations, it was an established sacred site. It was a place of immense spiritual and cultural significance where, it's worth noting, many Lakota people still gather today.
So you have this immense contrast, a mountain that is deeply sacred to the indigenous population, which Borglum just suddenly decides is the perfect blank canvas to carve a monument to the United States government.
Right. It's quite the pivot.
What was his actual justification for claiming that specific peak?
Well, from a purely architectural and engineering standpoint, Borglum noted two overriding factors in his logs.
Okay.
First, the mountain faces southeast, which means it receives maximum direct exposure to the sun for most of the day.
Why does that matter so much for rock?
Because for a sculpture of that ridiculous scale, you are entirely dependent on shadows to define the facial features. If the mountain were in the shade, it would just look like a flat, textured wall.
Oh, that makes sense. You need the contrast.
Exactly. And second, the quality of the granite there was pristine. It erodes at a rate of roughly 1 inch every 10,000 years.
1 inch every 10,000 years.
Yeah, making it an incredibly permanent medium. Borglum saw those conditions and decided this was the singular place for what he called the formal rendering of the philosophy of our government into granite on a mountain peak.
It's just an incredible display of ego, honestly.
It really is.
But, having the grand vision to carve the philosophy of a nation into a sacred mountain doesn't actually buy the dynamite.
No, it definitely doesn't.
So how does a rogue sculptor and a local historian generate the massive federal funding required for something this huge?
Well, mechanics of the funding reveal one of the most brilliant pieces of political maneuvering of the era, honestly.
I love this part.
South Dakota Congressman William Williamson, who was also involved, understood that they needed the ultimate federal endorsement.
Right.
So in the summer of 1927, he invited the sitting president, Calvin Coolidge, to the Black Hills for a simple fishing vacation.
See, if you're listening to this and thinking, wait, the President of the United States just vanished into the woods to fish for the summer? We had the exact same reaction reading the timeline.
It sounds made up.
It really does. Coolidge goes out for what is scheduled as a brief, 3-week summer getaway, but he ends up staying in South Dakota for 3 months.
3 entire months.
Quarter of the year just fishing for trout. How did the president essentially abandon Washington? And how does a fishing trip translate into cold hard cash for a mountain carving?
Well, you have to look at the environment the local officials meticulously engineered for him.
Engineered.
Yeah, they established a summer White House out in the region, which allowed Coolidge to conduct his baseline presidential business remotely.
Okay, so he's still working a bit.
A bit, yes. But more importantly, they ensured he was having an incredibly successful vacation.
This is the crazy part.
Local workers were secretly stocking the streams with large trout every single night, so the president would have this bountiful catch every single morning.
Wait, they were literally rigging the fishing.
They were rigging the fishing.
That is amazing. It's like the ultimate captive audience strategy. Look how great South Dakota is, Mr. President.
Exactly. And it secured his absolute undivided attention. By keeping Coolidge relaxed and happily isolated in the Black Hills, these local visionaries were able to consistently but softly pitch him on the grandeur of Mount Rushmore.
Just slowly wearing him down while he catches giant trout.
And the proximity paid massive dividends. On August 10, 1927, while still on this extended vacation, President Coolidge officially dedicated the project.
Wow, he gave them the ultimate stamp of approval.
He did. Though, to be fair, the actual capital took a bit more time to secure.
Right, the money always does.
It wasn't until the final days of his presidency in 1929 that Coolidge signed legislation appropriating $250,000 in federal funds.
That is a massive chunk of change.
That financial injection led to the immediate creation of the Mount Rushmore National Memorial Commission.
$250,000 in 1929 is just a staggering amount of money to start with.
Huge.
And this is really the turning point where the story shifts from, quiet political lobbying to incredibly violent physical labor.
Oh, very violent.
Over the next 14 years, they deploy a workforce of about 400 men. And these aren't classically trained Italian marble sculptors either.
Not at all.
They are local miners and rock climbers, literally hanging off the side of a mountain in bosun's chairs.
The physical transition is stark,
Yeah.
and the primary tool for this delicate artistic endeavor was, ironically, dynamite.
This is the part of the project that completely breaks my brain.
Oh, no.
Using explosives for demolition, sure, that makes sense. But using dynamite for fine sculptural work, it's like doing surgery with a sledgehammer.
It sounds impossible.
How do you blast away the side of a mountain without accidentally blowing off George Washington's nose? Like, what is the actual mechanism there?
So the mechanism is a highly controlled technique called honeycombing, which Borglum heavily utilized.
Honeycombing.
Yeah. Rather than just setting off massive charges to blow away huge chunks of the cliff face, the workers would use heavy pneumatic drills to bore a dense grid of deep holes into the granite.
Okay.
They would drill these holes to within just a few inches of what would eventually become the final surface of the face.
So they are essentially creating a 3D pixel grid out of drilled holes.
That is a perfect analogy, actually. Once that grid was drilled, they would insert microcharges of dynamite into very specific holes.
Just tiny explosions.
Exactly. Because the rock was severely weakened by that honeycomb pattern, the microcharges would fracture the granite along incredibly precise fault lines.
Oh, wow.
The heavy bulk rock would just fall away, leaving this rough outline that was just inches thicker than the final skin of the sculpture.
So the dynamite gets them like 95% of the way there, and then the workers swing in with the pneumatic tools to shave off those final inches.
Correct. And the efficiency of this method is evident in the raw numbers. Over 14 years, they cleanly removed roughly 450,000 tons of rock from the mountain.
450,000 tons? That is just absurd.
And that material wasn't even hauled away. It remains in a massive scree field at the base of the mountain today. A stark visual record of the sheer volume of earth they displaced.
Just to contextualize the scale we were talking about for you listening, the heads themselves are 60 feet tall.
Giant.
That is roughly a 6-story building for just a face. The eyes are 11 feet across.
Yeah.
The noses are 20 feet long. You have guys dangling on steel cables who are physically smaller than the pupil of the eye they are currently carving.
It's terrifying to picture.
Given the sheer drops, the unpredictable weather in the Black Hills, and oh yeah, the daily use of explosives, you would naturally expect a massive casualty list.
You would. But the historical logs regarding safety are perhaps the most surprising documents in our entire stack.
Really?
Yes. Despite 14 years of heavy explosive demolition and suspended labor, 0 lives were lost during the construction of Mount Rushmore.
Wait, 0?
Not a single fatality.
That is genuinely unbelievable for industrial work in the 1930s. I mean, they were building skyscrapers in New York at the same time and losing guys left and right.
Exactly. It's a testament to how meticulous they were with the honeycombing and the rigging.
And the maintenance of that work never really stopped, did it? I mean, the project cost nearly $1 million to complete in 1941.
Right.
But today, trained climbers still have to scale the monument annually just to seal microscopic cracks in the rock.
They do.
Because if water gets in there and freezes, it expands.
Yeah.
And it could literally split Abraham Lincoln's face in half.
Yeah, it requires a constant active defense against nature just to maintain the illusion of stone, which actually transitions us nicely to the architectural intent behind the monument itself.
Right, because the honeycombing method allowed Borglum to sculpt basically anything he wanted.
Anything. So we have to examine his intense philosophical reasoning for choosing these 4 specific leaders to anchor his shrine of democracy.
Yeah, because our audience obviously knows who Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt are in a standard historical context.
Of course.
But Borglum's rationale for grouping them together on this mountain is very specific.
Huh?
He envisioned them representing four distinct pillars of the American timeline, right?
They do.
The founding, the expansion, the preservation, and the development of the nation. Washington was obviously the anchor, representing the birth of the Republic.
Natural.
And his face was the first to be completed. It was dedicated in 1934 and then again in 1936.
Yeah, Washington's prominence on the mountain is highly deliberate. If you look at it, he extends furthest out from the rock face.
Like he's leading the pack.
Exactly. And following Washington was Thomas Jefferson, who was chosen to symbolize the expansion of the country.
The Louisiana Purchase and all that.
Right. However, the engineering logs from the Jefferson carving reveal a near-catastrophic failure in the process.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Borglum's original architectural model had Jefferson positioned to Washington's right.
Yes, on the right side.
They spent massive amounts of time and money honeycombing and blasting that specific section of rock. But they hit a fatal flaw, didn't they?
They did. As the workers drilled deeper, the geology basically betrayed them.
Oh, man.
The granite on Washington's right was heavily interlaced with quartz and deep natural fissures. It completely lacked the structural integrity required to hold the fine detail of a 60-foot face.
Because when you are carving a mountain, you can't exactly patch over a mistake with some plaster.
No, you definitely cannot.
If the rock is bad, your entire multi-year plan is just ruined. What do?
Borglum had to make a brutal logistical decision. They couldn't save the work. So they literally packed the flawed carving of Jefferson with dynamite.
Oh, my God.
Blasted the entire ramp off the side of the mountain and just started over completely from scratch on Washington's left.
The resilience to just detonate years of work and move on is wild to me.
It's the ultimate sunk cost. But they had no choice. They finally managed to complete the relocated Jefferson sculpture in 1936.
Unbelievable. After Jefferson, they completed Abraham Lincoln in 1937, who was representing the preservation of the Union through the Civil War.
Right.
And finally, Theodore Roosevelt was completed in 1939. Borglum included Roosevelt because he viewed him as the champion of the working man, representing the industrial development of America as it entered the 20th century.
Yeah, and Roosevelt's sculpture actually contains one of the most sophisticated examples of sculptural illusion on the entire monument.
Oh, the glasses.
Yes, the glasses. Roosevelt famously wore pince-nez spectacles. But obviously, carving thin glass and delicate wireframes out of a solid mountain is physically impossible.
It would just shatter instantly. But when you look at the monument, he is clearly wearing glasses.
He is. And we see Borglum leveraging that sun exposure he prioritized so heavily when selecting the site.
How so?
He carved the solid bridge of the glasses over Roosevelt's nose, and then he carved only the raised outer ridges of the frames along the cheeks.
So the lenses aren't even there.
No, they aren't. By leaving the center completely open, he forces the harsh sunlight to cast a dark shadow, a ring around the eyes.
Wow.
The human brain naturally connects those shadows and fills in the blanks, which creates the absolute illusion of glass lenses when you're standing hundreds of yards away.
It's an incredible manipulation of light and shadow. And when you dig into Borglum's background in these sources, you see that pulling lifelike emotion out of cold stone was a signature of his for decades.
Oh, the precedent for this kind of work is very well documented. Long before he ever looked at the Black Hills, Borglum sculpted a massive marble bust of Abraham Lincoln back in 1908.
And the story surrounding that 1908 bust in our sources is incredibly poignant.
It really is.
So Borglum finishes this marble head of Lincoln and just places it in a shop window in New York. Sometime later, Robert T. Lincoln, the son of the late president, is walking by and stops in front of the window.
Just by chance.
Just by chance. And his immediate visceral reaction to seeing the bust is to say, I never expected to see father again.
I mean, it is a stunning validation of the artist's ability to capture not just a basic likeness, but the actual psychological weight of the subject.
Exactly. Robert T. Lincoln was so moved that he wrote a letter to Borglum on February 6, 1908. He told him, I think it is the most extraordinarily good portrait of my father I have ever seen, and it impressed me deeply as a work of art which speaks for itself in the most wonderful manner.
That's high praise.
It is. And fun fact, that same bust sits in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol building right now.
It perfectly illustrates why Borglum was uniquely suited to execute Mount Rushmore. He possessed the sheer audacity required to blow up 500,000 tons of rock, sure, but he paired it with his deep, sensitive understanding of portraiture.
A really rare combination. So what does this all mean for us today?
It's a lot to process.
We've traced an incredible timeline today. A local historian wants to boost highway traffic, which leads to a rogue sculptor claiming a sacred Lakota mountain.
Right.
That leads to a 3-month presidential fishing trip to secure funding, which then results in 14 years of high-altitude dynamite surgery.
It highlights how a monument of this scale is, frankly, never born from a single unified vision.
No, it's messy.
Very. It is the result of compounding ambitions, political leverage, and just relentless physical labor. But tragically, the man who forced this huge vision into reality never even saw its official completion.
Yeah, that's sad.
Gutzon Borglum died on March 6, 1941.
Just months before the project wrapped up.
Exactly. The immense burden of finalizing the sculptures and coordinating the ultimate dedication fell directly to his son, Lincoln Borglum.
Talk about pressure.
Right. It was Lincoln who oversaw the final touches in time for the ceremony on October 31st, 1941.
It literally became a multi-generational effort just to finish the job. From the ancient reverence of the 6 grandfathers to a wild roadside tourism pitch to the 4 massive faces that gaze over the Black Hills today. The story of how the Earth was altered here is vastly more complicated than the postcard image suggests.
It definitely is. And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought exercise drawn directly from the core philosophy Borglum intended for the site.
Okay, I'm ready.
When you visualize this colossal shrine of democracy, and you consider Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Lincoln, which one of these 4 presidents do you think is the most important to you and to America?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is. Consider the vastly different eras they navigated, the values they represent, and share your thoughts with a family member or friend.
A 60-foot-tall conversation starter. I love it. It definitely changes how you think about dynamite, doesn't it?
It really does.
Thank you so much for joining us as we explored this massive piece of history today. Keep digging into the stories behind the monuments around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.